now?
Yeah, no
Maybe
worries.
start the intro, yeah.
Sure.
All right. So, yeah, okay. So, hi, everyone. Thanks for coming to the first LunchMaths talk of 2020. Lawrence and I are the students from Monash, helping to organise LunchMath this year. But we've also teamed up with Melbourne Uni's Maths and Stats Society, also known as MUMS. And just a couple of quick announcements before we begin. If you could just keep your microphone muted during the talk, unless you're asking a question, that would be very much appreciated, just to avoid any potential cacophony. Also, you might have noticed we are recording the talk. This is so that we can upload the talk to YouTube soon after it's given. That way people who can't make it live can come and see it. We will have time for questions at the end, though. This won't be recorded. And if you would like to ask a question, just either unmute or you can leave it in the chat. Myself and Lawrence will be keeping an eye on that, and we'll tell Marty tell Marty your question. Also, just to give an idea of how LunchMaths is going to run this semester, we will have a talk every second teaching week, and we'll be alternating between a speaker from Monash and a speaker from Melbourne. So this week is obviously from Monash. His name is Marty, and he's quite the character of Monash's maths department. And he will be talking about mathematics in hell, why the Mathologer is evil, and other indiscrete thoughts. And with that, I'll hand over to Marty.
Okay, thank you. I'll assume that everyone can hear me unless you can't. So if you can't hear me, then tell me. And then if I can't hear you, then we're stuck. Many of you will know just how much I love technology. So you know how grateful I am for this opportunity. Emma Jane Lawrence, I can't say how much this special opportunity means to me, and I won't forget you've arranged this ever. All right. It's obviously a good time for a talk about mathematics in hell. Can I tell whether any of my students are here? Is there a way that students can yell out at me or something? I'm just curious to know. I have no idea who the audience is.
You can click up where it says speaker view. You can click on gallery view to see like a whole bunch of little videos, and you can also click on participants.
I can click on participants. Okay.
Yeah.
But then I'll have to get out of my slideshow, won't I?
Yeah.
Yeah. So let's forget it. I don't care who I'm talking to. I never do. All right. I'll just talk for the next 50 minutes until Lawrence and Emma Jane tell me to shut up. I should say at any time, I'm more than happy for you to heckle or ask questions or whatever. We'll try and do this as much like a a talk similar to the norm as we can, even though we can't. This is it's kind of a version of a talk I gave at the Ⅎ-MS conference last year called The One True Secret to Teaching Mathematics. That was an interesting talk. It was held in this post-apocalyptic room, which sort of symbolizes everything you love about modern university teaching. They didn't pay me for that talk. They did give me a really nice name tag, though, which I treasure dearly. For anybody who cares, my preferred pronoun is it, so keep that in mind. But this talk goes back a long, long way. The ways it's sort of a prehistory of the Mathologer as well. It really goes back to 1995 or around then, where this Melbourne Uni rabble-rouser approached me about problems with school mathematics. I was kind of an outspoken guy. I tended to yell at people, and he wanted me to yell at school mathematics. And so we met and we talked about it, and he showed me, I think his daughter was doing year 9 or year 10, and he showed me from the textbook, and he says, look, can you believe it? Look, they're saying pi is equal to 3.14. And I was thinking, well, yeah, that's not great. It's certainly not great. I'm not sure, I'm not sure I'm gonna go on a crusade to make them put the approximate equal sign, but yeah. But actually, I'm not so sure. I'm not sure if we shouldn't have a zero tolerance policy. But in anyway, this sort of thing kind of stewed, and I sort of paid attention. Eventually, I approached the Math Association of Victoria, the Teachers Association, about giving some talks to teachers. And they said, oh, yeah, we think it's a great idea. We just don't think any teachers will come. So they're just not interested in learning about maths. But anyway, it sort of morphed into public lectures. And this was really Max Stevens and Sally Turnbull, who was the CEO of the MAV at the time, who supported this. And they were, well, they weren't assholes. They said, okay, well, let's give it a go. And so the very first lecture was 2001 with The Joy of Gambling, attended by about 15 people, 13 of them being my mates. But that was the start. And in a sense, that was actually the start of Mathologer. In the next year, 𝑤𝑒'𝑚𝑒𝑡 joined in, and we started 15 odd years of public talks at various places and age articles and everything. And a lot of most of these talks were, presenting beautiful maths and the like, but there was grumpy talks as well. It was also the start of LunchMaths. Okay, so around the same time, I started LunchMaths, and I'm really, really happy that it still exists. It's just wonderful. So thank you to suckers like Lawrence and Emma and Norm for keeping it going. It's just wonderful that you're doing it, and it's wonderful you're doing it in the midst of the chaos we're in. And LunchMaths was a great thing at the time, I thought. It was the only kind of seminar there was. And 𝑤𝑒'𝑚𝑒𝑡 was, of course, a huge supporter of this. As were this guy, Mike Deacon, he was the heart and soul of Monash Maths when it had a soul. A great guy, he died a few years ago. And another guy who really supported it was 𝑤𝑒'𝑚𝑒𝑡𝑦, who he died recently, lovely guy. And he gave a number of really good LunchMaths talks long ago. I also started giving talks to the MAV, some expository, some critical. And this sort of went on. I won't give the whole history, but by about 2013, they were asking me to give keynotes, and I stopped being subtle about it. I figured the Australian maths curriculum is a disaster, would kind of end it. Then I'll say that, and then people would be happy with that. That would end it, but it didn't end it. There was also in the Age articles 𝑤𝑒'𝑚𝑒𝑡 and I wrote. We attacked Maths Ed at times. Most of them, again, were nice articles, not all of them. So the Paradox of Australian Maths Education, that's actually a version of a Matt Groening joke who had the paradox of French sex comedies. He said that the French are funny and sex is funny and comedies are funny, but somehow French sex comedies are never funny. Well, you've got the Paradox of Australian Maths Education and you can work it out. But anyway, the MAV asked me back for another keynote. Their theme was Back to the Future. So I said, the back is the only way to the future. I figured that's got to end it. They're not going to ask me back after this. I've said it. Next year, they asked me back. So I decided, okay, this time I'm going to go for it. You're not going to ask me back after this. So the title of the talk was Same Sermon, New Jokes. Actually, that was the abstract. The title went as follows. The title was just one sentence. It starts out, so like the half-crazy uncle for God knows what reasons been invited to yet another Christian Christmas gathering, here I am back for yet another keynote, and yet again I feel obligated to hammer home just how hilariously bad things are. All right. Well, the sentence was actually 255 words. This is the complete sentence. And it just took, I tried to just hit as many targets as I could. And the MAV were, of course, thrilled about this title or abstract. And objected and gave me a list of organizations I wasn't allowed to criticize. It was also the start, for those who have been to some of my recent talks, this was the start of the vodka tradition, absolute proof. And this is the Simon I always say, Simon Prior there. And so here, for those who can see, here's my vodka, time for a toast to Simon. Oh, God. No one can actually see me on screen, right? It's just the slides, right? Okay. Anyway, Simon Prior was the CEO of MAV, and he was not an asshole. And if there's one person, apart from 𝑤𝑒'𝑚𝑒𝑡 himself, of course, who's responsible for the existence of Mathologer, it's Simon Prior. He was our roadie, our ad agent, our promoter, our nanny, everything for about 15 years. He's just a wonderful guy, and he did it. He just really supported Burkhardt and me for a long, long time. Anyway, so that was I'm not going to do that talk, but it was a great talk. And, you know, people could choose whatever targets they liked, and we just went through the targets. Of course, I had to add some more targets. I had to add the Math Association of Victoria as a target. And I decided, well, why stop there? So we added a few more targets.
No one ever gets to blame. No one ever is to blame. No one ever is to blame.
Okay. And of course, we need one more target. Of course, we need Burkhardt in there. And actually, one more target. I included myself as a target as well, in all seriousness. And this was really an enjoyable talk, at least for me, not for the MAV. But we spent like an hour, and people would just choose which target they wanted me to talk about. And this hilarious, about 2/3 of this talk has never been seen by anyone. Lots of my talks I give only once and then disappears, and this one is even crazier than that. It's like building castles in the sand on a private beach. All right, so no one get to see it, but it was great. It was good fun. And is anyone missing from this? Well, there's one target missing. Norman, are you here? All right. So there's the Australian Mathematics Trust. All right. And why are they a target? Well, there's this T-shirt. So anybody want to say what's wrong with the T-shirt? Happy for someone to be unmuted if they can unmute. I'm not sure I can hear people if they unmute. Can anyone talk? Can anyone hear me, or do I need to?
The rule of one.
The one? It doesn't work. I'm not sure that the question and answer and hurling insults will work. So it's just going to be one way. I will hurl insults. You can email me your complaints. This is
It should be fine. It's just that Norm was a bit, like his connection wasn't very good just now.
All right. Okay. All right. That's fine. Anyway, look, it's a beautiful T-shirt. It's exploring the quintic, the unsolvability of the quintic. Unfortunately, you have 1 + 2 + 3 + 2 - 3 - 5 is equal to 0. So the quintic actually has the solution x = 1. So actually that quintic is solvable. It's just a bit weird to talk about the insolvability of quintic with a solvable quintic. Having said that, I actually really like the Australian Maths Trust. They're the one organization, mainly what I'm attacking is organizations. They're the one organization in Australia that I think is really doing good. The problem is that the average age of the trust members is 98, 97 if you include Norm. And that's a problem, but I really like the Australian Mathematics Trust. Okay, now this sort of started with, I started going full time. The MAV has ended. Simon left the MAV, and Burkhardt and I were kind of getting sick of their nonsense. So I started this blog. It's kind of like the evil twin of Mathologer. You know, Mathologer is evil. You can decide which one's the evil twin. It started with in 2017. This was a blog post, a long blog post on a screw up in math methods, not the first and not the last. The most recent one is a simple message to primary schools about multiplication tables, and the message, well, there's a couple of sentences, but then the main sentence is the following is, dear primary schools, if your students are not learning the multiplication tables up to 12 by heart, then you are fucking up. And I specialize in diplomatic language. I actually am a very good diplomat when I try. I just don't try. But this is really the point. You have all this discussion about the nature of teaching. What's going wrong with teaching? Oh, all these unqualified teachers. But if we can't just agree that kids have to know 7 times 8, and no, it's not that they have to be able to work it out. They have to goddamn know it. If we cannot agree on that, we can't agree on anything. It's simple, it's Jesus. You know, are we dealing with coronavirus? Well, if we can't convince people to put on their goddamn masks, who the hell cares about anything else? The same thing, all right? Don't overcomplicate it. If the essence is screwed up, then we're screwed. Another aspect of primary schools is just fractions. A over B is equal to C over D. If there's a lot that secondary teachers would like from primary teachers, and there's a lot that university lecturers would like from secondary teachers. But if there were 2 things that secondary teachers really want primary schools to do, it would be teach the goddamn multiplication tables properly and teach kids what fractions mean. And they don't know what fractions mean. And in fact, well, most everybody doesn't know what fractions means. And actually, I'll prove it to you later. Okay. All right. Now, the blog has a bunch of things. This is not really about my blog, but I'll do some glimpses of hell for about 15 minutes, and then I'll start picking on the villains, the criminals. I have a series, Proof of Stupidity Without Words. Well, what do you say? All right, Archimedes thought that pi was between 223 over 71 and 22 over 7. Well, he didn't think it, he proved it. I mean, but it's that kind of tone deaf thing, which is just gets you wrong. Of course, the note underneath, some mathematicians thought that the value of pi was between 2 fractions. Well, you're going out on a limb there. This kind of nonsense, I don't want to just pick on the low-hanging fruit. I mean, this one's particularly stupid, and that's what that kind of series in the blog is about, but that's not the main point. The main point is kind of tone-deaf statements and tone-deaf proofs and tone-deaf arguments are endemic in the textbooks and in the education. Actually, the new editor of the textbook series contacted me there. That was the 3rd person who would editor or writer who would ever contact me about textbooks. And he said, thank you for attacking our books. And I met with him, and actually that was positive. I'm not sure it's going to work, but he was genuinely interested in talking to mathematicians to try to make the books better. Most of the interactions are not that successful. The other series I have a lot, which people who read my blog a lot, is What Is This Crap Here, the Which series. And this starts with, the very first one was on index laws. This one was not an index law, but this one was from a textbook. Actually, the lead author of the textbook, asked if I would look at his textbooks. He didn't offer to pay me anything, but at least he asked. And I said, okay, well, since you asked, I was kind of impressed that someone would actually ask. I'd done reviews with Burkhard Polster and also Dave Treby, a great teacher, ex-student Monash guy. We'd done reviews and slammed some books, so it was impressive that he asked me. But he said, I often joke that we need to ensure our books are Marty Ross proof. And I wrote back and saying, I'm flattered that you're concerned whether the book is Marty and Dave Treby proof. In brief, the book is not. I wrote quite a lot back. Actually, preparing for this talk, I dug up my notes. I happen to have the notes I sent him. This one, okay, so this is about a to the power of 0, which in the body of the text is just saying, well, a to the 0 is equal to 1. It's a year 8 text. So why is it equal to 1? Well, then you get to the proof that a to the 0 is equal to 1, which is the standard thing of using the index laws to prove 3 to the 0 is equal to 1. And I just wrote, I mean, I wrote a lot in response to him, but this was quick, it was unpaid. I just wrote on this aspect, I just said, well, exercise 12 is complete bullshit. I sent him all my criticisms and actually said some nice things about his book as well. He never replied. Maybe I could have been more diplomatic. Anyway, in 2016, I gave a talk, not on textbooks and stuff, was, what was it? How to Teach Math Methods If You Must. But index laws came up and I picked on this, and it turned out an author of that book, not the lead author, but another author was in the audience. And after I had hammered this, he said, well, I wrote that, and you're right. And I said, well, but I wrote to the lead author and said, this is crap. And he said, yeah, it was crap. But you said it was crap, but you didn't say why. Oh, Jesus Christ. I mean, there's a guy with an honors degree in math. I mean, figure it out. But anyway, that's eventually it was changed. So in 2020, I noticed, I just checked now, it's actually changed, and it's used, you know, that the body is the same, but it demonstrates that 3 to the 0 should equal 1. What the hell does should mean? It's kind of better, but it's still dumb. It's still dumb, and it still doesn't get it. And the year 9 textbook with the same lead author has the same stupid arguments still. And that's part of the thing. That's part of the nature of this, is they are not listening. They don't care.
Marty, if I have a heart attack looking at this, it's your fault.
There's more to come. Oh, you have it. Wait for the cheese. Wait for the cheese. All right. That's the trouble with this talk. There's so much to say. And I say, I can't fit this all in, but we have to have the cheese. All right. I counted, and I made 124 criticisms of his book. Yeah, criticisms. And most of them substantive, like, yeah, oh, Jesus, you gotta change that. It's wrong, or, you know, it's dumb, or it's misleading. And I looked, and the 6 of them have changed. Whether they changed because of me, who knows, but 6 of them have changed. You know, so, you know, the guy asked, at least the guy asked. He didn't pay me, he didn't thank me, he didn't make many of the changes, but, you know, better than some. All right, here's a puzzle for you. All right, so here's a puzzle, and we will answer it at the end. I don't know if I can hear anybody ever, but we'll see. So -1 to the 1/3. Everybody got it?
Hey, Marty, I can actually make a poll for this. So if you want,
yeah, make a
put
poll.
these in.
Yes, please make a poll. I have no idea what happens if you make a poll. I think of it as a big stick with you put a flag on, but if you can make a poll, great. -1 to the 1/3 and -1 to the 2/6. Are they equal? And I will tell you that a textbook got this badly wrong, and they corrected it, but they corrected it incorrectly. It's better, but not right. And most teachers and most VCE teachers and most students I ask get this wrong. And I will say, actually, I should have a shout out to Michael Evans. I don't like his books, and he knows I don't like his books, and I piss him off no end. And he said point blank to me, sometimes I just wish you would shut up, Marty. But he listens. He cares about whether his books are correct or not in a way that most other authors do not. They're not correct, they're still bad, but he cares. All right, New Zealand exam. Now, New Zealand, this is mostly about Australia. I don't know if we have people from overseas or Mars. Okay, but this is a problem this was a nationwide exam. Rectangle has an area of x squared plus 5x minus 30x minus 36. Great. All right, what are the lengths of the sides of the rectangle in terms of x? Now this has multiple answers. I've got a poll here. All right, I answered the poll. Okay, so it gets off my screen. Okay, no more polls. Anyway, what's the answer to this? Well, the answer that, you know, there's many answers, but the best answer is pi and x squared plus 5x minus 36 divided by pi. All right, the question's insane. How does this stuff come up in a national exam? Are there no New Zealand mathematicians? And in fact, after this came, this exam was hammered because it was too hard, but no one hammered this basic point that the question made no sense, to the extent that in 2017, they had the exact same style of question. Then in 2018, they finally learned their lesson. But it's unbelievable. They simply don't care. There's actually a textbook which improved it. It had a rug with an area of 6x squared plus 12x, but actually you're not told that the rug is rectangular, which is really, you know, that's impressive. Okay. Still trying to get through as much of this as we can. Okay. Okay, now this is from, we just have to do this. The main thing is systemic wrongness, but some things are just so wonderful, you just have to fit them in somehow. And this wins the silver medal. All right, this is from a book that's from 2011. I don't know if it's still there or not, but a farmer has 2 C cows and 3 H horses. And you know it's not going to end well. And it doesn't, because what you're asked to do is find the square of the sum of the farmer's animals, which is All right, that is the second worst question I found in this textbook. Here's the worst one. Okay, the shop window displays X cheeses. I really feel like this is I'm in a Bob Newhart sketch where he's on the phone and he can't believe what he's hearing on the other end. All right, you know it's not going to go well. Now Burkhardt knows about this one, but I don't think he knows the full one. Burkhardt and Dave Treby and I wrote a review of Year 9 textbooks. Well, officially it was all three of us. More accurately, it was me. But I thought it would look nicer if there were three authors. It was kind of like an M&M Enterprises thing. Anyway, here's the next line of this question. A second shop always has x squared plus 2x minus 48 cheeses. Now that's what I remembered, but when preparing this talk, I went back and looked at the question, and it's actually worse than that. Because what are you actually supposed to do? Here's what you're supposed to do. Factorize the expression, show that the second shop does not have any cheeses on display when the first shop has 6 cheeses. And just to top it off, there's a photograph of cheeses next to the questions. To illustrate.
This isn't real. Like, that's not real.
This is real. This is
That's
real. No, this is
in reality, that book doesn't exist.
Oh, well, it does exist. I mean, whether it
It's a
still
fever
exists, I don't
dream.
know. But then, look, there's an issue. I mean, it's just so bad I had to include it. But the reality is that the index law thing is worse than this. This is so stupid, it doesn't matter. Of course, it's stupid in a way which is endemic now, that everything has to be about something. You're not allowed to just to factorize a polynomial. You have to factorize some fucking cheeses. This is always happening. Everything, and it's endemic in VCE. VCE is full of this shit, all of this shit. It's terrible. But this, you know, what's worse is the index laws is actually getting the nature of truth. What is a definition? What is an axiom? What is a theorem? None of this. Very quickly on NAPLAN. Now, this is not the main problem with NAPLAN. The main problem with NAPLAN is exactly the cheese thing, that it's about apples or cheese or bananas.
Do you mind if I ask a question really quickly, Marty?
Yes.
I almost hesitate to ask because you seem very incensed about it, but what precisely is the issue with the index law thing? I'm having difficulty seeing it.
I'll leave it to the end. I'll let you think about it for the rest. But actually, no, I'll answer it now. The thing is that the index, this is a standard sleight of hand they do. The index laws for natural numbers, positive whole numbers, is fine, right? You know, 3 to the x plus y is equal to 3 to the x times 3 to the y. They then take those index laws, or 3 to the x divided by 3 to the y is equal to 3 to the x minus y. They then take those index laws and presume automatically that they hold for other numbers, not just natural numbers, but 0 and negative numbers. 3 to the 0 equals 1 is a definition. You cannot prove it. You simply cannot prove it. It is a definition, end of story.
Yeah, that makes sense. Thanks.
Yeah, right. The thing about it is, the question is why teachers and textbooks get this wrong. They either are too stupid to realize that this is wrong. And I can understand a teacher, I can understand anybody not getting this if it's not their job to get it right. If you're writing a textbook, it's your job to get it right. And the one thing I said to the lead author is you must have an attentive, competent mathematician, preferably as a co-author, but at least as a critical line-by-line reviewer. If you don't have that, you're screwing up. A mathematician will catch that in a way that a teacher may not. The other aspect is I think they think it doesn't matter. It's just a fact. The kids get the fact. What the hell? But it does matter. It really matters. And all the time, I have kids, I tutor, and I see kids trying to make sense of 3 to the minus 1/2 power as if somehow it's 3 multiplied by itself minus 1/2 times. It just isn't. It isn't. That's not the way it works. It's simply a definition as reciprocal in root.
Marty, can I add a little comment? I don't want to derail your talk, but can I just add a tiny comment there?
Sure.
Because Ada asked the question. So the reason why university lecturers care a lot about this index law screw up
Yeah.
because what's really going on sort of in the future will be limits of the form where you have x as a base and y as a power. And then it's got two variables.
I'm just going to keep the slide going while you talk so people can look while we chat.
Sure. And, you know, if you think that the index laws always work, then you're doomed to failure when you try to understand that function of two variables, x to the power of y. And it takes serious effort at university to teach the kids that was a mess up, that was a screw up. I'm sorry you were told lies for 6 years, but
yeah, it screws up well before then. It screws up in VCE. It really does screw them up. They try to make sense of these algebraic indice things, and they just can't because they're trying to give a meaning to it as x to the x multiplied by itself y times, which just isn't there. They're looking for a meaning which isn't there. It's just a definition. Quickly on NAPLAN. The main thing around NAPLAN is it's numeracy shit. It's always about apples and cheese. But quickly, some simultaneous equations there. Sure, great. Year 9 NAPLAN, let's solve them. Nope, just which value of x satisfies both equations. It's just dumb. Or this one, in this equality, n is a whole number. 7 over n is less than 5 over 7. Now that's kind of good. All right, this is kind of good. You know, what does that tell you about n? Here's the question, what is the smallest possible value for n to make this inequality true? Well, they could say it a whole lot quicker. This one of the things about all this education stuff is they use 3 times the words they need. It's just what is the smallest possible whole number for which 7 over n is less than 5 over 7? The whole number mean? Well, if you look in the Australian curriculum, whole number means positive integer. Fine. Except if you look in the Australian curriculum, whole number means non-negative integer, which is a problem. Or if you look at the Australian curriculum, whole number means integer, which is a real problem. All right, the question is screwed. The question is screwed because whole number isn't precisely defined enough for this kind of stuff. They're sloppy. This in the Australian curriculum, Burkhardt and I, well, basically me, but Burkhardt signed off on it, made fun of this God knows how many years ago. One of the worst lines from the Australian curriculum, recognizing that right-angled triangles may generate results that are integers, fractions, or irrational numbers. The language is terrible. Generate results. What the hell does that mean? All right, but we know what they mean. All right, so 3, 4, 5, yeah, those are integers, but 1, 1, root 2, you're getting irrational numbers. But yeah, of course, why don't we have 3 pi, 4 pi, 5 pi? It's a fine irrational number triangle. And it's worse than that because in fact, you do not get fractions in the way they think you do as you get irrational numbers. The only way you get fractions in Pythagoras' theorem is the same way you get pi here, if you think about it. It's a terrible, terrible line. Okay, let's go on quickly. We'll try and get to this and then get to some villains. This is from the specialist exam last year. The vector resolute of I plus j minus k in the direction thingy is 2i minus 3j plus 5k. Find the values of m, n, and p. All right. Well, how can they be solved? Well, with I plus j minus k has length root 3, but somehow its projection has length root 14. So I'm not sure you're going to have very much luck in finding m, n, and p. All right, the question is screwed. But it's worse than wrong. It's worse than wrong. The whole premise of the question is screwed. It just makes no sense. If you diagram what they're trying to do, it makes no sense. Methods in God knows how many years. Standard question. The rule for a function is f of x equals the square root x minus 1. Solve f of x equals f inverse x. They love this question. How do you solve f of x equals f inverse x? Well, you calculate the inverse, equate them, and it's a mess. What does the examiner's report say to do? Solve a suitable equation and check. What's a suitable equation mean? For example, f of x equals x. It's not the same equation. It's not an equivalent equation. It doesn't work. It works on this example because it's cooked up, but it doesn't work. And we've done this for years. It's just screwed. And it's still taught. It's still taught. Teachers who know it's wrong teach it because they think that's what the curriculum authority expects. It's just ritual. It's not mathematics. Last one, specialist one. This one, very quickly, the position of a particle. Well, that's very cheesy for a particle going by that position, but what the hell. The distance traveled in 3/4 of a second is this. And you're supposed to find A, B, and C. Quickly, what did they expect? Well, the distance is the integral of the speed. The speed is the square root of r primed. Speed squared, should be, oh, I think I left out a square root sign there. But the point is that the speed squared should be a quadratic. So you just find A, B, and C. But that's not what the question asks. Teachers on my blog were unable to see this. They're smart guys. The guys who comment on my blog tend to be smart guys and critical guys. But they looked at this in the ritualistic way that was expected, whereas the mathematicians I asked immediately pulled it out as basically being a Diophantine equation. That the question being asked, the question a mathematician sees, is not what is being taught. Very quickly, Sachs. I wish I could go into Sachs, but I can't. Just go to my blog and read it. Sachs of shit. They are terrible. It's probably the worst aspect of VCE. All right. Quickly, got to do this quickly. This is a question from 1979. Stone is thrown so that it will hit a bird at the top of a pole. It's 1979. We're probably lucky that it's just a stone being thrown at a bird. However, at the instant the stone is thrown, the bird flies away in a horizontal straight line at the speed of 10 meters per second. The stone reaches a height of double that of the pole and in its descent touches the bird. Find the horizontal component of the velocity of the stone. What is that question? It's a great question, right? It's just a constant acceleration question. How do you solve it? I don't know. I actually haven't tried to solve this question. I know how I'd go about solving it. Write down the equations and see what happens. But how would it work out? What would you need to do? What would you eliminate? It's not clear. And this question, this was one question with 10 marks, take 11 minutes in the exam. Compare that to the most comparable question last year in specialist. All right. So this is one of these standard blocks going up a ramp questions. There's no friction anymore because friction doesn't exist. What the hell? All right. So what are you supposed to do? The first thing, you have 1 mark to actually just label the forces. Then you have a mark to do this. Then you have a mark to do that. Then you have 2 marks to do that. Finally, you have 5 marks to do that. It's almost never do they have a 5-mark question. Usually the maximum is 3 marks. But that's the difference. That's the difference. They're making hamburger. Is everything is microscopically assessed so that it's just a nitty-gritty little detail they're testing, and mostly pedantic detail. And the whole exam is like that. There are 20 multiple choice questions, 12 1-point questions, 18 2-point questions, 2 3-point questions, and 1 5-point question. You cannot test anything in this way except following dogma. That is what's being done in senior mathematics. Out of all this, I'm asking, well, what can I possibly do that will help? Or what can anybody possibly do that will help? And it's a serious question. I've spent 20 years trying to help to promote mathematics. And my honest opinion is that what I've done is effectively useless. Well, one thing at least I can do is point out the criminals. All right, and then I'll talk about the criminals and why they're criminals and how they get away with it. And the first criminals, of course, are the math ed experts. Then growth mindset. Well, that's not a criminal, it's a crime. But all this sort of mollycoddling thing of the precious little flowers can't be challenged. It's terrible. STEM, numeracy, that math has to be about something other than mathematics. Techno-fetishism, that if it uses a computer, it's better, whatever. Of course, the Mathologer, he's evil, and the master criminal underlying it all. And quickly in the time remaining, let me try and do that. Now, at the back of this, what we're talking about is teaching. And this goes back, in the talk I gave at 𝑤𝑒'𝑣𝑒, I gave the one true secret to teaching mathematics, of course, because I'm a great teacher and I'm arrogant about my teaching. Well, I've never actually given a talk about teaching before the 𝑤𝑒'𝑣𝑒 thing. I never claimed to be a good teacher. Now I will. I was a good lecturer. All right, but what's the secret to teaching mathematics? And it's obvious. There is no secret. The idea that there's some magic potion you can take to be a great teacher is just ridiculous. What is it? You got to know your subject. You got to know your students, and you got to care deeply about both. And that's it. There's nothing else. Okay? If you want to be a good teacher, your maths department doesn't care whether you teach well. They just care whether your students are annoyed or not. Your school doesn't care whether you teach well. They care whether the kids are annoyed or not. No one cares, but you should care because it's a great human thing to do. Okay? And if you care, then you will concentrate on it. You'll learn your subject. You will know about your students. I thought about spelling care with a K so you could remember it as KKK, but I thought better of it. Now, this is, of course, applies to anything. But, you know, there's special things. It's not that there's not tricks in teaching mathematics, but they're fifth order details, okay? And this has a lot of corollaries. And the most important corollary is you can and should ignore all education experts. Just ignore them, except, of course, the one in front of you, including the one in front of you. You should be ignoring me. It's a paradox, but it's true. And I'd reference, I'll reference this very famous mathematician called Dr. Benjamin Spock. All right, Baby and Childcare. Now, in the 50s, he wrote a book, and you'll see the point of this. Now, I know I look 80 years old. I've aged prematurely. I'm only 70, but I have young children. A really smart decision. Have children near 50. Really, it's a great idea. Anyway, so this is my younger daughter, Lillian, proudly wearing her Mobius scarf, St. Kilda Mobius scarf and St. Kilda Klein bottle hat. Anyway, my partner, she looked up all these books about taking care of babies and stuff like that. And I looked at them and I thought, nah, well, I'm not sure I want this. But anyway, I went, well, I remember Spock in the house. So I looked it up. And the thing about Spock, Spock's book in the 50s was huge. And the reason it was huge was because of the nature of the advice he gave. And this is his advice. This is how it started. And the parents' part, and the first thing, trust yourself. Don't take too seriously all that the neighbors say. Don't be overawed by what the experts say. Don't be afraid to trust your own common sense. And this was a massive message in the 50s because childcare had been taken over by behavioralist morons who had treated children like lab rats, and they completely screwed up childcare. And in the same manner, education is being screwed up by the maths ed experts. You think some clown doing neuroscience research is going to improve education? Ridiculous. What's going to improve it is having people who realize that learning 7 times 8 equals 56 is critical. It's trust your own common sense. The paradox here was that Spock was telling parents to trust themselves, but they all trusted him instead. And they said, please tell us what to do. It's like the life of Brian. And he said, no, don't trust me, trust yourself. It's also a little bit of problem because common sense has been destroyed by kind of an appeal to authority. The Australian professional standards, and this has versions in university as well. But these are standards for teachers, and these were arranged by wonderful university academics who really did a great job. Standard 1, know your students, great. Standard 2, know the content and how to teach it. Well, starting out well, but there is a standard 3, and there is a standard 1.1. And then there is more standards and more standards, more standards, more standards, more standards that goes on and on and on. And if you focus on everything, it is plain as you can be that you're focusing on nothing. Okay, the professional standards, all these professional standards are worse than pointless. They are losing the core message, the humanness of teaching. Know your students, know your subject, care about both. And of course, you should avoid professional development at all costs. It is all shit, everything they do. What Monash does is shit. Everybody knows it's shit, okay? And I'm sure it's the same shit at Melbourne. Yeah, yes, you have to do it, so you do it, but bring a book, all right? Just click the buttons. That doesn't matter. You're not going to learn anything. Should you develop professionally? Of course you should. You develop professionally by teaching and reflecting upon your teaching, like any sane human being would. All right. Next, in order to know your subject, there must be a subject to know, which we are losing. All right. And the universities don't care. Why study problems when you can solve them? U to the power of us, my God. That's an index law I'd really like to hear. This is just, it goes on and on. Universities don't care. All they care about is the fresh meat. All right, corollary 6. STEM is educational swill. It's not a subject, it's not a thing. All right, and so And it's worse than that because it's not, the M is tiny. What's the M in STEM? It's a little arithmetic. They don't give a shit about maths. What about maths? So here we
What about
are.
maths?
Oh, no one cares about maths, Martin, you little shit.
You're just saying that because of the trial separation.
No, she's quite right. No one does care about maths, Martin, you little shit.
God works in wondrous ways. But it's even worse than that. What we've got now is STEM, where technology is king. All right, it's all disappearing. And if nothing else, you should read this article, Rotten STEM, How Technology Corrupts Education. A wonderful article by a guy I don't know, Jared Woodard, talking about how technology is destroying things. And he writes, the purpose of education in the science is to cultivate children as knowers in and of the world. The purpose of STEM is just to create more of a certain kind of worker. All right, if you think school and university is about education, then STEM is shit. If you think it's about training people for jobs, then fine. The sciences and mathematics have a historic place in the curriculum, and technology does not, for the simple reason that the latter is not inherently about anything. All right, it's nothing. And it's worse than that. Technology as a subject is nothing, and technology as a tool is worse. This is from the PISA report, and PISA is crap as well, but it says, you know, if you want anything, if you want to do well for your students, get rid of their laptops, get rid of the internet, get rid of everything, give the teacher a data projector. God knows what you could do if you actually gave him a goddamn blackboard. It goes on and on. And this is sort of the nature of what's going on. This is Foucault's pendulum, all right? So that's Foucault and that's pendulum, except it's the wrong Foucault. All right, I'm not talking about that Foucault, and I'm not talking about that pendulum. I'm talking about this Foucault, all right? And this is Michel Foucault, who wrote a book, 70s, I think, on discipline and punishment, The Birth of the Prison. And it was about the regimentation of society, the regimentation of prisons, but then also the regimentation of schools. And of course, he had a point, but the point has disappeared, okay? You know, he's talking about correction and punishment, but when did correction become a bad thing? Correct means to correct, all right? And discipline, all right, discipline is used here and is used commonly to mean to punish people. But it doesn't just mean that, right? It means having, sorry, I've got it written down here, just trying to write. It's having the stamina to stay with something. It's having the discipline so that when you see a 10-point question on an exam, you don't just shit your pants. It's you can actually approach things. And of course, discipline also means a subject to learn, which has been lost, okay? And the same, so Foucault is writing about problems then, but the problems then are not necessarily the problems now. Okay, so, you know, I'm used to traditional targets, like the church was screwing up things in Australia, of course, and all these conservatives, but, you know, that's not necessarily the problem now. You know, so the guys who used to be the enemies, you know, well, they're still the enemies, they're still assholes, but they may not be the main assholes, they may not be the main problem, and they're not. And what if you don't know your subject? Well, of course, there's always YouTube, all right? And what is 0 to the power 0? You don't want to know the answer. And I'll give you a theorem, and I'm trying to give myself time to do this. Okay, so here's a theorem I'll do at the end. Is 1 plus 2 plus 3, no dots, is equal to minus 1 over 12. I'll prove that for you in a couple minutes, all right? All right, so corollaries. YouTube is an inseparable swamp of truth and garbage. All right, and that's the thing. There's great things on YouTube, but there is also complete shit and complete meaninglessness. And you don't know which is which unless you know beforehand somehow. And Borges, the Library of Babel, wrote a great book about this, where every book you wanted existed in the universe, but so did everything which guided you the wrong way. It's terrible, okay? And just the mathematical oath is first tell no lies. I don't know if Numberphile and Eddie Wu are lying or whether they're just too dumb to know the truth. Doesn't matter. All right. Corollary 9, Mathologer is evil. All right. Why is a Mathologer evil? Well, one reason he's evil is because of this book. Okay, 𝑤𝑒'𝑣𝑒, it's a book he wrote. And why is this book evil? This book is evil because Burkhardt and I started collaborating about a year after he wrote this book. And this is a beautiful book. And I really, really would love to have my name on that book, and I don't. And that's why he's evil. because he didn't start collaborating with me early enough. All right. The other reason he's evil is because of his Mathologer videos. And of course, he has to prepare the slides for this. And these are the slides he prepared for one of his talk. And of course, someone has to proofread those slides. And guess who does the proofreading? All right. And if that doesn't make him evil, I don't know what does. All right. But then, of course, the thing of why he's really evil is because of Marshall McLuhan is the medium is a mess. And I really think this. I think there is a way in which Burckhardt is doing real harm. I genuinely do. He's doing great stuff. He's doing stuff with humor and intelligence and accuracy that the other math channels are not. But he's also tricking people into thinking they know more than they do. All right, and Marshall McLuhan has said it, and before that, and Neil Postman, who's much funnier, Amusing Ourselves to Death is his most famous book. You should read it. And before that, Neil Postman had Bullshit and the Art of Crap Detection, which he gave as a lecture to teachers. He was a teacher for a while before that. Even before that, Peter DeBreeze, No, But I Saw the Movie. And a book with the title No, But I Saw the Movie pretty much tells you everything there is. Everything else is detail. This is what Postman says about education and what's happened. Thou shalt have no prerequisites. Thou shalt induce no perplexity. Thou shalt avoid exposition like the 10 plagues visited upon Egypt. The name we may properly give to an education without prerequisites, perplexity, and exposition is entertainment. And that's what he felt it was becoming. This was about TV. And he said, Cheers is no threat to our public health, but Sesame Street is, because Sesame Street is seen as educational when it is not. Cheers is just seen as entertainment. The problem is when you're tricked. He then wrote, he died in the early, maybe about 15 years ago. Technopoly was about computers, mainly about technology and our failure to understand it. But Technopoly is a great book on this. And then this talk in 1997, he talked about the computer. And this is just a snippet from that. What is the problem to which the computer claims to be the solution? And this is part of his answer.
Only a fool doesn't know that new technologies always produce winners and losers. Now, Bill Gates, who is, of course, a winner, knows this. And because he's no fool, his propaganda continuously implies that computer technology can bring harm to no one. Well, that is the way of winners. They want losers to be grateful and enthusiastic, and especially to be unaware that they are losers. Let's take school teachers as an example of losers who are deluded into thinking they are winners. There certainly does not exist any compelling evidence that personal computers or any other manifestation of computer technology can do for children what good, well-paid, underburdened teachers can do. Where then is the outcry from teachers? They are losers in this deal, and serious losers.
And they are, we are. Technology is destroying education. It's destroying the humanness. Okay, I understand we're in a pandemic. We do what we can do in a pandemic, but it is killing it. The lectures are already killed. They were being killed before the pandemic. I'm just going to rush ahead and we'll get to, and I've given the title away there, but that's what I have to do. -1 to the 1/3 is equal to -1 to the 2/6. What were the poll results, Lawrence? Did you get it?
Yep.
No.
Yeah, here it is.
Okay. And the answer, why? And I told you I would prove it to you, is this is understanding fractions. Okay. What have we got here? So what we got is -1 to the 1/3. Is that equal to -1 to the 2/6? Well, do you understand that A over B is equal to C over D? If they are equal, then anything you do with the left-hand side is the same as what you do with the right. -1 to the thing is equal to -1 to the same thing. They must be equal. You can think about how you got tricked. It's very easy to get tricked. But this is the nature of a fraction. It's the nature of an equality. And I'm telling you, understanding that 2/6 is equal to the same thing as 1/3 is not easy, and it is not taught. And that's the problem. Okay. And finally, quickly, theorem, 1 + 2 + 3, no dots is equal to -1/12. Okay, ready for the proof? Okay, we want to prove 1 + 2 + 3 is equal to -1/12. Well, that's the same as 1 + 2 + 3 times 12 is equal to -1. Well, that's the same as 72 is equal to -1. And that's the same as 73 is equal to 0. Can 73 equal to 0? Yes, and we know how to do that. All you need is a clock with 73 hours in it. Okay, and there you've got it. That's what you've got, all right? And that is a proof that 73 equals 0. Does it actually prove that 1 + 2 equals -12? No, of course not. I just redefined the nature of equals there so that 73 is equal to 0 mod 73. But that's what it is. And that's all that there is to that goddamn awful number file thing. If they had any integrity, they would take the fucking thing off. All right? You can prove anything is equal to anything as long as you change your definition of equals. Okay? Can all be done. All right? And there, amazingly, before 1 o'clock is the end of my talk. Thank you very much.
Thank you so much, Marty. If everyone could unmute themselves and give a round of applause.
Thank you. All right. I'm happy. So now how do I get take questions here? I'm not quite sure how.
Yeah. So